All right, so now we're welcoming our last speaker, so David Hartmann. And David lives in Brisbane and has been practicing acupuncture since 1997. He upgraded his qualifications with a Masters of Acupuncture in 2009. Expanding his field of practice, he also learned a different range of tuning fork therapies and has been treating patients using tuning forks since 2016. David has been a Chinese medicine lecturer for 24 years and has written 2 books on Chinese medicine, The Principles and Practical Applications of Acupuncture Point Combinations, and an Acupoint Dictionary. He has also written, currently in the 2nd edition, that one is, so he has also written 5 self-published books on tuning fork therapies/treatments, with 3 more in development. Since the year 2000, David has also written courses, presented at conferences and done his own standalone seminars in 14 countries around the world. Pretty impressive. He has also developed online workshops for 11 companies worldwide. Please join me in welcoming David Hartmann.
Thank you.
Thank you. So he's speaking about Shen and the pericardium.
Thanks, Tino.
No worries.
This is on? Sounds like it's on.
Done.
Thank you, Tino. Soon to be 15 countries because I'm invited to Portugal in September, so that's exciting. Thank you all for coming today. Those first 3 speakers, I learnt a lot, but what I loved about the 3 of them is that they're so passionate in the things that they talk about. You can really feel that as a participant. So I just wanted to thank the 3 of those speakers and thank Anta as well for having me today. A little side note, I'm not sure if Annie remembers. Annie was one of my teachers back in 93 and 94. She taught me acupuncture therapeutics 1 and 2. Thank you, darling. Brilliant teacher, and you saw her passion as well. So what I wanted to sort of touch on, yes, it is acupuncture, but it's also about how Chinese medicine, I guess, views mental health and emotions. It is the thing that I have a special interest in. My preference is to treat mental emotional turmoil. So I just wanted to take this little opportunity to sort of unpack it a little bit. So sometimes I get really angry. Is anyone else willing to admit that sometimes they get a bit angry? Yeah? It's not a bad emotion. It's a yang-based emotion, which is a fire emotion. A fire emotion or a yang emotion generates movement. Sometimes anger is a good emotion because it takes us out of a stuckness. It propels us into action. So, of course, you know, if you want anger reduction, maybe it's got nothing to do with you at all. Sometimes I get frustrated. I've got a thing called a justice meter. I think it's a bit to do with an empathy I have, and so I tend to avoid watching the news and reading newspapers. I don't want to know all the bad stuff that's happening. I'd prefer to be in my little protective cave, just pretending that bad stuff doesn't happen. Because if I hear it enough, it builds and it builds and it builds, and it creates a frustration and overwhelm and anger. Sometimes I get overwhelmed. It's hard, you know. You go through a day, sometimes you do get overwhelmed by it all. I thought that was quite a good quote from Henry Kissinger. There cannot be crisis this week. Next week, my schedule is already full. Stressed, sure, definitely a big one. So this is one possible stress reduction. I love those last couple of lines. Repeat steps as necessary or until you're unconscious. If you're unconscious, you can stop. Sometimes I get a little bit apathetic, a bit meh. I like this. I'm not angry or sad or happy to see you. I could not give a shit. You don't even ripple. I procrastinate sometimes. I probably procrastinate more than I should. And I don't know if you can read the little bits of words, but these are archetypes of procrastinators. So you've got the option that you decide to clean instead of doing what you should be doing. You panic, you make lists, you have a little snooze, you sidetrack, or you social share that you're doing nothing. So when I look at those objectively, I clean and I make lists. I don't know what, someone want to volunteer which one they like doing when they procrastinate? All of them? Wow. Sometimes I sidetrack. I was supposed to write this workshop last week, and then there was another workshop in a month, and I started writing it first. So sometimes I'm a bit of a sidetracker. But you know what, I'm not depressed. Sometimes I get a little bit sad. I know what depression is because I was in it for various points in my life. I can isolate what that is, and I know that I am not that. So that's why I've got the not me anymore and the I feel pretty good about myself. So while I may not be entirely happy with some physical and mental aspects of myself, I can genuinely look at myself in the mirror and say, I love you, which some people can't do. So they just don't look at themselves in mirrors. And I don't get anxious either. So I'm not anxiety girl. So anxiety girl, again, you might not be able to read it all. She's able to jump to the worst conclusion in a single bound. So what she's saying up in there is, oh God, these tights are so tight, I think I'm going to die. So I'm not anxiety girl either. But this is an interesting thing I found when I was doing a little bit of, because I do deep dives into the internet. Sometimes I feel like my life is being written by someone who isn't sure if they like me or not. So, emotions in Chinese medicine, and then predating that, even the philosophy. A lot of the philosophy from 600-700 BCE through actually framed some of the medicine. And so when we look at this, emotions are completely acceptable if you express the emotion that's relevant to what's happening. So if you're angry when you should be sad, well, that's not good. And if you're sad when you should be angry, that's not good. Or someone says to you, oh, you're not allowed to be angry anymore because anger is an inappropriate emotion for general society. That's not good either. You have to be angry when it's a relevant emotion. Take it so far, in fact, that if I get angry at you and it's relevant for me and you take offence, that's now your problem. It's actually not my problem. I dealt with my emotional state and now I'm over it. It's a funny one though, isn't it? I mean, we probably don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or pass our emotional turmoil onto them, but that is just something to think about. And that Emerus and even Annie mentioned it earlier, to a degree, emotions can create disease, or disease can create emotions. So there isn't that direct link often with someone that, say, drinks too much grog. They go to the doctor says, look, your liver's in a bit of strife. And then they might say, oh, has the anger got anything to do with the liver? Oh, no, it's got nothing to do with that. Whereas in Chinese medicine, there'd potentially be a link between those two things. And I think genetically also, emotions can be passed on from generation to generation as well. So that down the track, you've got someone that you're treating and they're holding this emotion from 2 generations ago. They don't even know it's there. And it can create all sorts of trauma as well. So what we're going to touch on are 3 concepts that kind of frame emotions in Chinese medicine. The heart organ, the pericardium organ, and this concept called Shen, which is a spirit. So we're going to look at those 3 each briefly. And for those of you that are acupuncturists or you do, say, tuina massage, there's a treatment for each of them as well. So you could needle, or you could do push thumbs on points, or the tuning forks. you could also use tuning forks on the points. So how that might look is you activate the fork and then you put it on the point. And they'll feel it and you'll see it. I don't know if you can see the tines from that far away. They're still vibrating. So you can feel it, and that is stimulating the point as well. We're going to touch on the idea of us all having what I call an inner critic, which a lot of people like that term, but I don't like that it's the only thing. Yin to yang, there should be an opposite, a support, which I refer to as Heart Shén. It came from a book that I got given years ago, Wayne Dyer. I got given it and they said to me, you should really read this. I think you'll really like it. And I went, oh, thanks very much. And I put it down. And about 3 years later, I wandered past and I went, oh, that book looks interesting. And I just opened it up randomly. And it said on the page, you should always do what makes your heart shine, or you should always do what makes your heart sing. And I went, oh, that's easy for you to say, buddy. So the book closed up again and it sat there again for a few more years. I needed to be ready for that. It actually is that simple. And so I thought, okay, for me, inner critic, Heart Shén are two opposites. There's nothing wrong with the inner critic in the context of what it is. It's inappropriate when it dominates, but it's actually quite useful. So we're going to look at those two quickly. And then having a little play with terms here. I'm not entirely comfortable. I like thought cemetery, I'll talk about it, or spirit burial ground, or maybe soul tattoos or Shen scars, in the context that the tattoos and the scars aren't just good or bad, they just are. Okay? And then quickly on the tuning forks as well. So when we get to the treatments, they're called acupuncture point combinations. So I've shortened that to APC. It's essentially a construct. You know, when for whatever therapy you do, your patient comes in, they talk to you, you decide on that therapy you're going to give them. That's the acupuncture point combination for acupuncturists. We're selecting a group of points to treat that person. So very quickly, basically I get a lot of information from lots of different textbooks, workshops, conferences, peers. I'm always trying to learn from others, some in my books as well. And yeah, I don't know quite how that's happened, but yeah, 30 years of acupuncture. Because I started in 93, in 94 I'm putting needles in people in the student clinic. So that kind of counts as me treating people, doesn't it? So from 1994 to now, surely. So this is from a book called The Yellow Emperor's Classic, Huang Di Nei Jing. The heart is the sovereign of all organs and represents the consciousness of one's being. It is responsible for intelligence, wisdom, and spiritual transformation. It's essentially the first book, I guess, not that it was exactly a book, but the first book that we associate with being Chinese medicine. So it's the emperor. So the heart is the emperor because it cares about all of its subjects. And in return, the subjects then care about the emperor. This is assuming, of course, that the emperor is a really good dude. Or dudette, as my girls used to say. It's not always dudes, Dad. It's an image of what you would imagine to be the perfect person to rule your country. Haven't probably had too many of them for a while. If at all, dear, see, this is why I don't watch the news. It's the perfect person to rule. And because they're perfect, they care about the subjects, and in return they go, you're a nice person, I'm going to care about you too. So it's the give and take of that. The heart's main emotion is joy, which I imagine if I was to get you to put your hands up for what your favourite emotion was, it would probably be something like joy. It's not a bad emotion, it's a great emotion. But it's the context of what joy is. Joy that's sustainable is contentment, harmony, peace, and balance. It is not an adrenaline-charged spike of energy that makes you stimulate various hormones so that you feel good. The idea of joy is actually a bit more of it's not so much passive, but you're sitting in an energy that doesn't use up a lot of your chi. So for me, contentment is sitting down in the backyard with my dogs in the afternoon. I allocate time, most days when I'm at home, to just go out the back, throw the ball to the dogs. The phone stays in the house, and I just throw the ball and I just watch them. And I just enjoy what they're doing, and I enjoy myself and just enjoy the moment. That for me is a contentment. Whereas some people go, God, that's kind of boring. Or what do you do out there for 2 hours? I just throw the ball to the dogs and I watch the dogs. Really? Time goes by so quick. They can't understand it. They have to have a phone in front of them, or they have to have something on the television that generates an energy that stimulates them. Doesn't mean I'm any better than anyone else. I'm just saying that's, for me, my contentment. So when the emperor feels that, then the subjects feel that. The subjects are the other organs and every other system in your body. So if the heart feels it, everything else feels it. And when everything else feels it, the heart will feel it too. So again, that give and take. This is a quote from the Tao Te Ching, which talks about this contentment. So when the way prevails in the empire, the way as in the Tao, fleet-footed horses are relegated to ploughing the fields. When the way does not prevail in the empire, war horses breed on the border. There is no crime greater than having too many desires. There is no disaster greater than not being content. There is no misfortune greater than being covetous. Hence, in being content, one will always have enough. Now, that book in and of itself has quite a lot of riddles and it's quite confusing, and I don't always understand everything that's being said. That's pretty clear for me, what that's saying. So it can fall out of whack. It can go into stagnations as well, which is things like the stress, frustration, overwhelm, but it can also go into excess. When we go into excess, either the body wants to stay in it, like adding fuel to a fire, and so it'll drive into things like mania, delirium, hysteria, frenzy, raving, psychosis, insanity. Anger can fuel itself for a while. And even though anger is a propulsive emotion, it can also get stuck. You know how someone rants and raves and they just don't even know what they're saying half the time when they've started on the anger run, and then they just keep going? That's fuel as well, and that's going into almost a stuck excess. So these are treatable in an excess by bringing down the excess. Deficiencies, of course, not just depression, sadness, withdrawal, melancholy, unhappy, and then these ones like downhearted. They're actually using heart in the word. Dispirited, the spirit is the Shen, which is housed in the heart. So all of these things are treatable as well. Maybe you want to tonify the heart to bring more energy up. The biggest problem with deficiencies in Chinese medicine with emotions is that you don't do anything in it. So you just sit in it. So because you're sitting in it, it's not using energy, so you can just stay in it. What you need to do is propel yourself out of it. Sometimes it's saying, do whatever you can to get up and get moving. Walk to the end of the block and back. That movement generates activity. It can help to bring you out of that little funk that you're in. So this is a bit wordy, but essentially what I'm talking about here is that joy is the most yang emotion we have. It's even more so than anger, because joy and heart are fire element, and fire element is the most yang element we have. So even more than anger. So it means we can stay in joy the least amount out of any emotion that we have, which really sucks, because it's a great emotion. But if you can stay in joy as being that contentment, peace, harmony, balance, that's sustainable. But if you're trying to drive into stimulated joy, manic version, you lose it much faster. You know, people talk about this incredible feeling when they jump out of a perfectly good plane. The euphoria that they feel, what are they going to get off the back of that at some point? You can't stay up like that. You're going to crash. People talk about tattoos being something that gives them a huge amount of charge. So they just keep getting them because they get the charge, then they get the fall off, and then they go, oh, I know what that tattoo did for me, so I'll get another one. So things that keep you up can't stay up. They have to crash at some point. It's the cycle of Chinese medicine. You know, back in those original sort of philosophical thinking ideas pre-Christian era, the Chinese were very much looking constantly in their philosophies as being that things will go up and up and up, they'll peak and they'll roll off. So they go yang, 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 then they roll into their yin. Whereas a lot of Greek philosophers were thinking things were quite linear. So things start, maybe there's a few bumps and bruises on the way, but essentially it's just going to keep going in that direction. So in Chinese medicine, there's very much the offset to the onset. So here's a manic possibility for treating. So you can see what I've got here on the left are the locations of the points. The names of the points abbreviated, so GV is Dumai, or governing vessel, large intestine, pericardium, heart, stomach, kidney. Now all of them collectively are looking at bringing the energy down. That, I must admit, I don't get many patients coming in when they're in a manic state because they're off doing what they do. They're not coming in to get acupuncture to calm down because they're off having, you know, climbing, what do they used to say in the Chinese classics, you know, ascend high mountains and sing, discard clothing and run around. They're not coming to acupuncture to calm down, they're already having too much fun. So we don't usually see them in that manic state, but if you do, that's one possibility. It's a pretty strong treatment. If you know anything about acupuncture, do 10, 12 and 14. That's a triple threat for fire. That's going to drop you really hard. So are they robust enough to handle it? You've got some balancing points throughout to balance that out, but you've got to decide if your patient can handle something like that. Or if you're in depression, what can we do to bring you up? I guess the biggest thing with depression is if the patient's willing to talk to you honestly about the depression, which would be ideal, you've got to find out if there's any suicidal thoughts in there, because if there is, you've got to go slower. So you might be thinking, actually, shouldn't I go harder because they're in a really bad place and they're teetering? Slower. Baby steps with them. You just got to get them feeling a little bit better each time. If you bring them out of depression too quick, they launch out and they go, yes, I feel bloody fantastic. And they're running around and they're doing great things. What's that doing? Using energy that you just gave them, but they don't have. So eventually they will drop and they'll drop back into depression again. And the concern with suicidal thoughts is when you're thinking suicide, you don't have energy to do it necessarily. If you give them the energy and then they're starting to feel like they're going to go back into depression again, it's a conversation that's a bit scary. They might go, I'm not going back down there, but I've got the energy to follow through with my threat or desire. So if there's suicidal stuff, slow everything down. Less needles, less length of time with the needles in. Not everyone's going to own that side of themselves until they maybe trust you as a practitioner. So if you're not sure and you think maybe, just go gentle anyway. So again, that's one of the options. So gallbladder, CV's conception vessel or Renmai. So these are 3 points on the chest, and then you've got kidney 25, which is also on the chest. You've got some points on the back. Basically, what we're trying to do is generate energy for movement and to sustain a feeling of that contentment. Okay, the Shen, how have I got for time? Is an update? Yep. And how long do I have till? Not sure. I'll just keep going till someone starts waving. So the Shen gives the orders that precipitate each human life, but the Shen also gives us our heavenly mandate, our individual destiny. There's a part of Chinese philosophy and medicine that believe that you're put on this earth in your body to live the life you're living. And whatever life that is, be the best in that life that you can be. And it has something to do with that original concept that heaven put the emperor on earth to be the emperor because they were the best for that. If you're born into a farming family, you've been given that heavenly mandate to be the best farmer you can be. So everyone got given a job to do the best they can in that job to create a harmonious balance within Chinese society. So if some farmers decided, I don't want to do this stuff, and they want to change to a different career, that's moving away from this idea of heavenly mandate. So what might happen is then you have less farmers, which compromises then how the rest of society works. And this idea of your heavenly mandate or destiny is part of your Shen, which is part of your heart, because as it says here, well, it says it next page, the Shen is housed in the heart. So what is Shen? It's spirit. Giovanni Machachia called it the mind. I'm not the biggest fan of that, even though I did like his books. What else? It's memory. It's short-term, long-term. It's memory in the context of studying, concentrating. It's your consciousness, how alert you are or semi-alert. It's sleep, everything to do with sleep. How well you sleep, how well you don't. So insomnia, narcolepsy, how you dream. All of the emotions, not just joy. Because the Shen's housed in the heart, its favoured emotion is joy, but it does govern all of the emotions as well. And then all of the 5 spirits, the Hun, Po, Yi and Ji. Hun is your dreaming spirit, Po is your doing spirit, and then your non-doing, your wu-wei. So you dream an idea, then you action the idea. You action it in the Po, but you also don't act all day. You've got to non-act, so that's also Po. The Yi is your thought, intellect, and the Ji is your willpower, drive, determination, courage. So the Shen governs all of those things. So even though the Shen is housed in the heart, does the heart physically house it, or could it be housed in the brain? And this has been going on throughout the centuries with various Chinese medicine practitioners wondering if, in fact, the Shen that's supposed to be here is actually up in here. Or is it both? Because some Chinese medicine thinking is that the brain is kind of just the Shen, which is just the heart. So the brain is the heart, that they're connected in that way. Does it really matter? I guess for me, what we know of as the brain, if we're happy to link that to the heart and the Shen, then the Shen can obviously do a lot of stuff for our brain as well. It's also related to destiny, assuming there is such a thing. The idea of heavenly mandate, which is essentially another form of destiny anyway. Our self-esteem and our goodness, on the assumption that we're born good. It's an interesting one. Are we born good or are we born bad? Or is it nature, nurture? What makes a good person a bad person or a bad person a good person? It's one of those things I don't know if we'll, what our thoughts are on that. So let's assume for the sake of this workshop that we're living the life we're meant to live. Then that life has been planned out for us via our destiny. And that's housed in the heart and in the Shen. So if someone feels like they've lost their way in life or never had a way, or to help remind them of their true path, you can treat the Shen. So here's some good stuff. Because we do have some patients, some friends, some family, maybe ourselves from time to time. We feel like maybe there's no point to life, or there should be more to life, or why aren't we living the life we're meant to, whatever that thing might be, or that we have no reason for living. So if we're running into those thoughts, we're not tracking with what our destiny is. And so it's about finding what that is. And so acupuncture can help change people's thinking and their lives to prompt them to come out of that funk, or however you might want to refer to it as. Heavenly mandate was Tian Ming, It was originally used exclusively for the emperor, which stated, as I said, that the universe put the best person on the throne to rule. Which is kind of funny because for a while what would happen is the Chinese would go, oh yeah, they're the best emperor because of heavenly mandate. And then after a while, maybe the emperor's not doing so well. And so you decide, maybe with an army, that you've got to take that emperor down. And then what do? You say it's heavenly mandate that that emperor has to go down because the emperor is a bad egg. So I'm going to use my army to remove the bad emperor, and then I'm going to put myself there because that's what it was supposed to be. But it's not my fault. It's heaven's mandate. It's Tianming. Interesting thinking. But for us now, basically, it's destiny. It's this mandate of heaven. It's fate, one's lifespan. The Shen also governs our self-esteem. It's a fascinating thing to see someone's self-esteem evolve and change through a series of acupuncture treatments or tuning fork treatments. It's quite phenomenal. And with self-esteem, we've kind of got an inside and an outside. And it was touched on today already with the other lecturers that we're a microcosm to the macrocosm. Annie showed you with the, what were those rods? Yeah, just how big that is. Some people call it an aura, some people call it a biofield. With tuning forks, they often call it a biofield, and they use the fork, usually an unweighted one, and they use it off the body. So they use it, say, off a chakra or off an organ, and actually activate it out there, which is a bit woo-woo. And, you know, if some patients are already struggling with the concept of natural medicine being a bit hippie-like, then maybe you don't start waving forks around out in their body like this. What's this doing? Oh, it's going to help your headache. Actually, when I was doing year 12, I had a friend whose dad went to an acupuncturist. It was a small town in New South Wales. This guy went to an acupuncturist, I can't even believe he did, for a headache. He went once, he never went again. Why? Because the acupuncturist put all the needles in his feet, none in his head, and didn't explain what he was doing. So this guy goes home and he says, this acupuncturist didn't even listen to me. Acupuncture clearly doesn't work. If I've got a headache, put needles in my head. So the theory behind it is probably quite sound. Maybe he had too much up here and we're trying to drop the energy, therefore he'll get less headaches. Wasn't explained well to him. So if we don't do a good job of explaining things to people, sometimes that's a problem too. So we have an internal skin, which is how we view ourselves, and the external skin is how we react to people's views of us, real or perceived. And the energy we get from people that might not say anything at all. I might walk past someone and might look at me and they go, gee, David's carrying a little bit of extra weight there. Even if I didn't hear them say it because they said it to themselves, potentially I can get that. You can put beautiful barriers up there that are what we call semi-permeable. You know, allow some stuff in but not everything, and allow some stuff out and not everything as well. And then goodness. So Mencius was one of the Confucian scholars. Confucius and Mencius never claimed that they were gods, so they gave, when Christians turned up in China, they couldn't figure out how to say their names, so they Latinised their names. So Mencius or Mengzi believed that you're born good. So you're born good inherently, so if you're bad, then you can be brought back to goodness. How do you get brought back to goodness? You do Confucian stuff. An early sell to, get people to come to Confucianism. It'll make you better. Some Confucian scholars believed you're born bad, and the only way to make you good, same thing, is do Confucianism. Is that 10 minutes? Thank you. I wasn't sure if that was the drowning thing. Thank you. I like to think that people are born good. I have this, hope that inherently everyone underneath all the layers are good people. And so I like to believe that, and that inherent underlying goodness is housed in the heart. Now, if you've got a narcissistic prick or some other person that isn't concerned about this, they're never going to come to you for treatment. I've never had a narcissist come to me for acupuncture to be less narcissistic. I've had narcissists come for treatment for other things, but never for that because they don't think they need treatment for that. Nothing wrong with it, yes, according to them. So if we want to treat that inner goodness, we can go back to the heart. So what Mencius basically said is that the heart of goodness was four hearts, like the four chambers of the heart. The heart of compassion and pity, shame, courtesy and modesty, right and wrong. And all of those four individual hearts required a different Confucian precept to be worked on. And when you've worked on it enough and it's acceptable, you can tick that and you can say, that chamber is rock solid. Now let's move on to the next ones. And overriding it all is this concept of Junzi, the perfect person. If you've ticked all the boxes and your heart is good, then you are potentially a perfect person. So how do you treat the Shen? This actually is a treatment with Shen in the name of the points. When I studied acupuncture, we had to learn the Chinese names for the points as well as the English names of the points, which was good. The only flaw to that was that we didn't get told what the Chinese meant in English. So we had to basically rote learn the pinyin names, but they didn't necessarily mean anything to us. Actually, interestingly, Annie was very good because she would sit down and she would say, we might do spleen channel for 2 weeks, right? So we'd talk about the spleen channel, we'd practice the spleen channel, and then Annie would sit down at the front and then she would say, okay, Tai Bai, spleen 3, great white. She'd actually unpack the points so you made more sense what they meant. But this is an actual Shen-based treatment. Just bearing in mind, of course, Shen actually does have different meanings in Chinese, depending on where the tone line is. So bladder 62, for example, is Shen Mai. That Shen means extending, it doesn't mean spirit. Actually still treats the Shen, interestingly anyway, but this is a combination of points that just have the Shen or spirit in the name. 12 needles, front and back. That's quite a nice treatment, and one that helps the person just to feel balanced and at peace with themselves. It helps to balance the inner critic and the heart shines, the emotions of a person. The pericardium is like the court jester who makes the king laugh, bringing forth joy. So the pericardium is the lining of the heart. So it's not just helping the heart to feel joy, it's also the physical protector of the heart. So it's our Xīn Bāo is actually the Chinese name for pericardium. Xin is heart, Bao is wrap, embrace, hug, like a shield. So I've basically translated it as embrace, bodyguard, shield, wrap. And interestingly, in Greek, the pericardium means around the heart, because it's physically around the heart. So it does 2 jobs, which I think is the next slide. It's the physical protector of the heart, and it's also the metaphysical. So it can help you can use the pericardium to treat the heart from a physical perspective, like say angina or palpitations or something like that, or just the Shen-based stuff, emotions. Yes, and it's multi-layered. Again, even though the pericardium is physically around the heart, it's kind of layered. I almost look at it as being the physical around the heart, then it's in and around the skin, and then it's off the skin, a certain distance. That was really cool watching those rods actually to get a sense of where that is at any given point as well, like an aura. So what that means is you could do a physical treatment on the body, or you could do a treatment out in the field to treat the pericardium. It's undervalued because we don't talk about it a lot in Chinese medicine literature. So what we're going to look at, though, is how it treats the Shen and emotions. I think all these slides are available for you afterwards as well, because there's a lot of info. So what could we do? Some of the same points can be used for heart, for pericardium, and for Shen. So again, similar structure, different reasons for why the points are used, any different ones. So Dumai or governing vessel, CV is conception vessel or Ren, that's urinary bladder, pericardium, TE is triple energizer, or I think Annie said triple heater, 3 heater. So Xīn Bāo is 3 heater, 3 warmer, 3 burner, or triple energizer. Triple energizer kind of is talking about the 3 parts and that they energize, because sometimes with heater, warmer, burner, we think, oh, it must be all about heat. But the triple energizer is also about heat and like fire and water and the balance between that, so yang and yin, and also hot and cold. So it's not just all about heating, it's about the balance in the body. This is quite a bit wordy. What have I got? Not much time left. Basically, all it's trying to say, and I know I'm talking while you're probably trying to read it, is that, you know, people struggle in life. I'm not saying I'm standing up here and I'm happy and I'm feeling in a good place, and I have for a while, but things haven't always been that way, and sometimes there's still challenges. And what I basically tried to do was look at that inner critic part of me and try to understand it more. And I tried to make it funny and a joke. So I actually started to call it Evil Homer. I think is he on the next slide? No. So Evil Homer was in a Simpsons episode where he had an angel Homer and a devil Homer on the shoulder, and he'd reach into the fridge and there'd be a beer. And he'd go, should I not? And the devil Homer would say, come on, it's just a beer. And the angel Homer would say, don't do that, you know, you're already put on weight, you should, you know, not drink that. And then he'd choose to do it or not. And if Evil Homer won, then Evil Homer would get the maracas out and actually start dancing and singing. So am I allowed to sing? I am Evil Homer. And I just said my maracas. And so I kind of thought, well, he might be a fun opposite to the inner critic. This is me trying to work myself out. In the end, I didn't like it. Evil Homer wasn't funny. But that's when that Wayne Dyer book suddenly became very important. Because when I went back and looked at it again and read the whole thing, I went, yeah, okay, now I understand. I've got this opposite that's better, which is the Heart Shines. And my last name's Hartmann, Heart Shines. I thought that works quite nice. And so now it's things like I'm a success because I self-manifest rather than self-destruct or self-deflect. Some people will refuse to take compliments. Gee, you made a really good meal tonight. Oh, I whipped it up in 5 minutes. Or I didn't think it was that good. Why not take the compliment? It's going to make you feel good. It's like a heart hug. Or you self-destruct. You put barriers up yourself to limit your success. And then there's this idea of soul tattoos, Shen scars, or thought cemetery, spirit burial ground. I don't know what the best term is. I'm playing with that. But it's what has happened in your life, good, bad, whatever you want to frame it, that's got you to this point. So everything that's got you, everything that's happened to you in your life has got you to this point. So even the things that you might phrase as bad, if those things didn't happen, are you sitting here right now? Maybe it's a way of feeling a bit better about your life. I like it. I think that for me, everything that's happened in my life has got me to here. And so they're my scars, because not all scars are bad. They're your war wounds or your things that are good. Or they're your tattoos. I use the word tattoo because they're not really so easy to remove, because we don't want to. They're what got you to here. And sometimes I've got patients that really struggle with trying to understand the things that happened in the past, and they just want to be able to never talk about it again, pretend it doesn't exist, or any other various thing, but never ever honour them. And sometimes it's about honouring that helps them to feel better in their mental health. Yeah. So that's it. I know I'm out of time. So if you do want to contact me, that's my email. I've got a couple of websites. The one on the right's the tuning forks. The one on the left is more the Chinese medicine. I just was mentioning I do have different workshops around the place in Australia, and my flyers out the front there tell you where I am on what dates. And they're my books. I don't know what else. What I do want to say, though, is thank you for spending your Sunday with all of us. It's been a wonderful day. I love being able to learn, and I love to be able to talk in front of people and hopefully inspire. And again, if you have any questions moving forward, please feel free to contact me as well. And have a lovely rest of the day. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks, mate. Cheers.